go. All right. Moving on. Okay, so find a seat. It's kind of bright. Hey, my duty. Okay. All right. So whatever your choice of, I feel much better. I feel a lot better on the porch again.
Yeah.
It is not my preference to do it out of the living room. There's just not enough space, as far as I'm concerned. But anyway, so whatever your preferred seated position is, whether you're just simply cross-legged or whether your legs are extended, whether you're on a pillow or on a block or on a bolster, whatever your seated situation may be, whether you're leaning back against the wall, that's fine too. Keeping the head nice and free would definitely be my preference. For the matter, even if you wanted to lay down, that would be fine too. The problem with the laying down is the, more of an opportunity to fall asleep. So if that's where you're heading, that's totally fine. If that is not where you want to go, then perhaps you would rather stay seated, and that's fine too. And then we'll go right back to that. I do have something in mind that I wanna offer you. So we'll see how that goes. So just as usual, kind of noticing where you find yourself in time and space. Kind of connecting with your environment, noticing how the sits bones connect to the mat, how the legs are kind of soft and, gravity pulling them down. Maybe it takes a moment to settle into the seated shape. Again, keep in mind that it takes time for your body to get used to sitting in a certain position for an extended period of time. So it is not a given that you sit down and your body will be comfortable for the duration of your meditation. That is absolutely not the case. You are developing the strength in your body to sit as well. So something to keep in mind for sure. And if you know what you're doing and you want to go about it your way, you're just simply joining us for the energy of the group, that is also totally fine. If you'd like to follow more along the lines of where I'm going to lead you, that is obviously offered as well. So checking in with the breath at first is generally the way that I like to start. Again, feel free to go about it in any other way. Noticing the breath in its simplicity, noticing how it comes in through your nose, into your lungs, or maybe even further down, whether it hits the diaphragm or not. Notice how the chest lifts as you inhale and how it collapses as you exhale. Notice there is a natural tendency of the shoulders to become a little heavier with each exhale. Maybe the sits bones connect into the mat a little bit more as well with each exhale. Again, scanning the body for any tension through the legs, especially through the hips, through the inner thighs and groins. I find myself almost always holding some level of tension in my legs, and it does take a conscious effort for me to release that. So just notice if you have a similar holding pattern. Maybe turning your awareness into the sound. Noticing any sounds that are entering your space. Whether it's the sounds that are inside of your house or something that's coming from outside in to your space, or if in case you are outside, noticing anything that may be showing up. Maybe this is where you stay, watching your breath, your body, tuning into the sounds, maybe even the texture of your clothing onto your skin, or the feel of the skin where it's not covered by clothing. Notice if you're able to stay with those objects, or whether you get carried away by your thinking mind, by the things that need to happen whenever you're done with this, or what needs to happen tomorrow, or what your week looks like, or what the weekend has presented itself, or anything else that you may be thinking about. Notice if you're just simply lost in your thoughts. The moment you notice that happening, you gently redirect your awareness back into the breath, to the body, to the sound, to the touch. Or perhaps you create a little separation between the you that's doing the thinking and then the you that's watching the thinking. And as you're perhaps watching the thinking, if that's the way that you're going, notice how much of me, myself, and I is included in that train of thoughts. I was doing this, I have to do this, I need to be there, I need to do this, I need to take care of this, I need to do this for this person, or this person need to do this for me. Notice the engagement of the personal engagement of you within the stream of thoughts. While you're thinking about that, regardless of what the topic is, I'd like you to try to bring yourself into a way that you can take your stream of thoughts simply as facts. Can you go into the most factual way to narrate your train of thoughts? And I'll give you an example. And I will use an example from Eckhart Tolle's book, New Earth, which is one of my favorite books, but the example is also super awesome. So there's a person that goes into a restaurant and orders a soup. The soup arrives in front of the person and it's cold. The fact is that the soup is cold. And there's several ways that you can go about it. You can tell the waiter the fact that the soup is cold without it attaching a personal injustice to yourself, right? So you can say simply, the soup is cold. It's a statement, it's a fact. So that's one way to look at that situation. And the other way, which is my favorite way to distinguish between the two, is the following. You can say, how dare you bring me this cold soup? How dare you bring me cold soup? Notice the difference between the two. difference is obvious, that may not be the case for some other people, and that's fine. Is it possible for you to consider some of the things that are happening to you and that are tugging close to your heart in a little more factual way? Can you take the you yourself, your personal injustice part out of the situation? Is it possible for you to look at the facts without creating the action of whatever is happening to you to be a personal offense on your person? Is it possible? Sure. Is it easy? No, of course not. But I would like for you to entertain the possibility of changing the narrative in your head about whatever it is that you may be thinking about that's tugging a little closer to your heart, possibly. And perhaps you consider the fact that it is not a personal offense to you, whatever it is that it may be happening. Maybe it's just simply happening for whatever other reasons. It has nothing to do with you. It has no intention to offend you or inconvenience you. And maybe it has. Maybe you were really hungry and you really wanted that soup. Right? But is it possible that it is not considered a personal attack on you? Just notice. Parts of our personalities, the parts that take everything personally, the parts that make everything about us, about ourselves, about how it makes us feel and how it makes us unjust and inconvenienced. Can we for a moment consider that that is not the intention of what's happening? Can we pause and take a breath before we react, before we try to protect ourselves from whatever the feelings that are being invoked? Is it possible for us to try to look at things in a little more factual way? Face value. The soup is cold. It's not meant to offend you in any way. It's not a direct attack on your person. How is it going to change your experience if you are able to do that? That's not to say that you would be indifferent to anything that's happening to you that you're not enjoying. You're still going to send the soup back. But you don't necessarily have to feel personally offended by the fact that you have received a cold soup. Or whatever the example may be that you're playing with in your head. It is so interesting how often the things that we say to other people and the way we communicate gets misunderstood and misconstrued simply by making assumptions or taking things personally. How can we become a little more of a face value response? My other favorite example is of Erica asking me if I wanted more tea. Oh, that was so good. I think I talked about this before actually in meditation. It is so interesting the stories that we're making up in our minds about what people said to us and why did they said it and what did they mean and how it hurt our feelings and how it continues to hurt our feelings in a certain way perhaps. When at the end of the day it has nothing to do with you. Whatever that other person may have said or did has nothing to do with you and everything to do with whatever they're suffering with and whatever's going on in their head and whatever trauma they're trying to overcome or whatever feelings they're trying to sort through. And then you are trying to figure out the exact same thing on your side. It seems really simple when you think about it from the soup perspective, right? So the soup is cold. It's a simple fact. There's no ego involved in that. The moment you take it personally, that's where the ego comes in. Right? You can still be right about something and have your ego involved. The fact that you want to be right is the part that is the tricky part. So even though you know that you're right about something, the moment you have the need for somebody else believing in your fact, that's the moment where you lose the face value, if that makes any sense. None of that is simple by any means, because we do want to be right and we want other people to value our opinions, and there's a place for that, for sure. There's always a place for that. But then where is the fine line? Where's the balance that you take it into a more of a personal injustice or attack on your own person? That's kind of where it becomes a little more tricky, I guess. The part where you feel like injustice is being made to you, right? How dare you bring me cold soup? How dare you, bring me cold soup? So simple yet so powerful. When the ego get into our own way, and then we create our own suffering that way. Is Is there a way for us to learn to not do that? There is. One of the ways is to watch your mind, watch the thinking, watch the language that you're using, watch the way that you are taking things personally or not. And then some things you may be taking more personally than others, and that's totally fine. So some areas of your life you may have a better handle on your ego than others, right? So that's the opportunity to work on those areas where you feel like you are coming short. Having that conversation with yourself in your mind, maybe retrospectively or just generically, is part of building the tool to be able to balance that a little bit slowly over time, perhaps. And maybe you're like, what the fuck is she talking about? And that's fine too. And notice where the train of thought is leading you. Notice the engagement of you yourself, you and yourself, the ego part, the personality, the image that you may have of yourself in your head, in your train of thoughts. Notice how personally offended you may feel by certain things, certain behaviors, or certain people, certain situations. Gently notice where you find yourself in the time and space. Notice where the train of thoughts took you. Notice if that made any sense at all. No worries if it didn't. Gently redirect your awareness back to the breath, back to the body. Maybe a little more engagement with the breath. Whenever you're ready, flutter the eyes open if they're closed. Maybe stretch out a little. How dare you bring me cold soup?
I love that story.
I know, me too. And it's so funny because it came up for me a couple times in conversation actually in the last 2 days, and I find it really funny. How dare you bring me cold soup? Anyway, where did you go?
Oh, wow. There's a lot going on.
Oh yeah?
Yeah. It was interesting because you're talking about like how we make assumptions.
Mm-hmm.
And this is really interesting. I thought this morning I went on a walk, and on my way back, I'm walking by this house that had all these flags just lining their whole yard. I mean, it was just like flag after flag after flag.
Like political flags?
Yeah,
Or,
like
yeah.
American flags.
Yeah.
You know, just
Okay.
like all the way around their yard, really super close together. And there's this woman with her dogs, and some of them have fallen, and she's just picking them up kind of quickly. And so my mind went to assumptions, like how we're so quick to make certain assumptions. And so I started making a couple of my own, and I started thinking, well, she's really serious about this, you know? Maybe she's super patriotic, and then the soft side goes to maybe she lost someone in a war, or maybe she lives alone, or maybe her son served, or you know, and these mean a lot to her, or maybe she's just mad, or maybe she's OCD, and all these things are going on, right? And then she picks up the last flag and walks past the house and into the house next door. And she was just being kind, picking up the flags for whoever the woman or people are that live there.
Oh, wow.
So as you're talking about all these assumptions, I kept thinking about the flag story, you know, like, and how we do that, and we make these assumptions about things, and we don't even maybe really know what's going on over there, you know.
We hardly ever do.
And that's what I was thinking about the whole time when you're talking about the soup.
How dare you bring me cold soup? Miss Erica. Miss Erica.
Yes.
What happened over there?
This leg went numb.
Okay.
It's still waking up. And, yeah, a lot of things.
Nothing to share?
No, not really. I mean, I could, but I don't really want to.
No, that's fine. You don't have to. That's perfectly legitimate.
But yes, all those assumptions are because those are things that are in you that you possibly would be doing had you had all those flags out. If my son had passed, if I, all these things.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, when we make these assumptions, it is a reflection of what we have in us. And if it gives a rise, an emotion, also a reflection, but it also is a projection of someone else. It's a masking of what they are really, or they're trying to figure out what you were saying. Yeah. So that very much is true. So in the end, it all is what it is. And it all ain't what it ain't. And it's our emotion attached to that. I'm sorry, I feel like I'm talking behind your back.
It's funny.
It's our emotion that we attach to it that makes it what it is. But it is.
Well, or
things are
actually,
factual.
or does it make what it ain't?
Or it ain't what it ain't. But I do think there's a level of frequency with actions or inactions. Spite, anger, fear, although there's a level of frequency there, whether that's intended or not. Meaning, somebody can be very spiteful and they're doing that very consciously.
Like,
and that is what it is. They
right. They're doing that on
Right.
purpose, is
Right.
what you're saying, and
Right.
that's the fact.
Right.
Right. Okay. Sure.
And they can flat out say, yes, I did that on purpose.
Right. Yeah.
And so that is another kind of is what it is, ain't what it ain't.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah. Now, but doesn't it kind of play into what I was saying, because it's still not about you,
No.
and it's still
It's
not.
very much about them. So
Right.
again, it is what it is. They are doing that spitefully and purposely. So what do I do with that?
Right.
Do I react the same way?
Right.
Is that going to
Right.
make it better or make it go away?
Right.
Or yeah.
It's just so hard to look at it that way.
Oh,
I
it
mean,
is. It is. I think well, like anything, it takes practice.
Sure. What about you? What would you like to share, if anything?
I went somewhere else.
Oh yeah, where did you go?
Well, I haven't meditated outside for a long time.
Okay.
And I didn't have a loss last week. So throughout the week, I actually have been meditating quite a bit. I'll share actually that I
Yeah.
meditated today at lunch. And really last time I practiced yesterday, so I actually meditated in the morning. And meditated Saturday as well. And Friday, I took my alarm went on and I was supposed to only sit for half an hour, and then I'm sitting for an hour and a half, which is,
Were your legs falling asleep?
I think they were beyond that.
Beyond that,
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
Whatever that next level is.
Sort of like it was after the hour, but all that said, guess I needed that.
Yeah, sure.
That's the only thing I can think of.
Yeah.
And there was some things this morning that I was working on that probably could have related to the whole soup.
Yeah.
Cold soup,
How dare you bring me cold soup?
But that was in the
I love
morning.
it.
So today or this afternoon, the breeze.
Yeah.
It was just amazing. Last night, my teenage daughter and I watched a movie, which was an animated movie, and halfway through the movie, where I was like, I shouldn't be watching this, but I turned it off a couple times and just kind of like see where she was, and she was okay, so we just went through it.
Okay.
And after the whole hour, I still felt like I'm not sure we should watch that, but we did, and so we actually tried to do some meditation afterwards.
Okay.
I thought it's really good. She does yoga and whatnot.
No, she may be listening to this.
But she was a good sport, and we tried one time meditation at first and just didn't go well, and then we actually did something really
Oh, yeah?
and I just let her choose, and I said, okay, you just pick. And one of the ones we picked was about stillness, about
It wasn't about soup.
it wasn't one about soup. It was one about going and meditating out on nature.
Okay.
So as I listened to the soup story, I listened to it, but then afterwards, I just kind of went into that, and I was just enjoying the breeze. And
Yeah.
when we first sat in, which I don't usually have visualization or colors anymore, my mind even just my eyes gave me just from the side outside.
Yeah, sure.
I had this bright orange color, and then it went into this similar to this, actually, reflection of this or whatever.
Yeah.
And then after that, I just went whatever. So that's kind of.
That's cool. That's so fun. Well, maybe Erin will join us. Erin is Marco's daughter. Maybe she'll join us on the porch sometimes. Maybe. We'll see. All right. Well, thank you guys so much, as always. Thank you for sharing. So thank you for participating. Thank you for doing yoga. How dare? How dare you serve me cold soup? It's such a fun example. I love it because it's so representative of, I feel, how we tend to like personalize everything as like a personal offense. We're like offended by everything. Not everybody, but I think a good chunk of people. And it doesn't have to be that way. So maybe a little consideration of, like Erica was saying, it's not what you're receiving is not necessarily about you. It's coming as a projection potentially from the other person. Now the question is, what are you gonna do with it?
How you react.
Are you gonna react? Are you gonna let it trigger you? Are you gonna let the ego come with your personal own story of how you're being affected? Or are you gonna be able to take a breath and say, this is not about me. How am I gonna deal with this, right? And that's kind of what we're doing, I feel here, or what we're trying to practice as we meditate, or we reflect on some of these patterns, because these are just simply patterns that we have learned over time. That's our habitual way of being, habitual way of reacting to anything and everything. So anyway, wrap that up. Thank you so much for being with us. We are not practicing tomorrow at noon because I will be teaching at camp, so I will see you there. I don't have a plan for Tuesday yet. We're gonna skip for now. So we'll be back on Wednesday at 5 p.m. Yes. With flow and followed by meditation. All right. Thank you guys so much. Thank you guys so much. Namaste, friends from the porch. Session has ended. Goodbye.